G'day folks, and welcome to part 3 of exploring Fraser Island. This is a complete guide, everything you need to know, especially about Cathedrals. That's where we're staying. It's a fenced camping area. It's got an electric grid gate thing so the dingoes can't get in, so you don't have to worry about them eating your baby. But all jokes aside, it's not a bad campsite. Prices are up there. For our family for a week it was about $600, something like that. But everything is expensive on Fraser. And talking about expensive things on Fraser, it's about time we refueled. Our Hilux is a diesel, and you can see their diesel is $3.20 a litre, unleaded $3.10. I mean, that's up there, but you don't have much choice over here. Ice, they weren't giving that away either at $6.50 for a bag, only a 3.5 kilo bag, not a 5 as well. So some of the other facilities here, the toilet shower blocks, certainly not new, but they get the job done. There's also a couple of laundries here. They're all pay per use, but at least they're there if you need to dry your clothes. There's also Wi-Fi available up at the kiosk, but it was $30 for 4 gigs, so keep that in mind. If you want the internet, you'll be paying for it, and you've got to sit down there to use it. Cathedrals goes alright, but that's not what we're here for, so let's get out there and explore a bit more of this island. This morning we're heading up around Indian Head for a fish. The tide's coming up and it's almost at its peak, which means we're not in any real danger of swamping these cars. Whilst travelling on Fraser Island, and particularly the beaches, the tide is the most important thing to consider. It's almost right up now, which means if we get stuck, it's not going to come up and swamp our cars. In saying that, we need to get to Indian Head because we want to fish the top of the tide, so we've got to go as fast as we can. Although we're hitting a few hold-ups, having to wait for these guys to get out of the way. And also there's some big washouts on the beach from all the fresh running out of the sand due to all this rain we've been having. Fraser Island at certain times of the year is a world-class tailor fishery. Tailor's like a small pelagic fish, not something I'd normally target, but if they're running, I'd definitely be chasing them. Unfortunately at the moment, they're not running. It's not time of the year where they're here. So unfortunately for the eastern beach, we're limited to whiting, flathead, there might be some bream, and they usually dart in the waves. I'm no dart expert, and well, I don't claim to be any sort of fishing expert, but we're going to get out here and see what we can find.
Right over down here at the Indian Head track, so we cut around the big headland, but we're not going around there today. We're going to have a fish on this side. It's pretty windy, it's pretty rough, it's pretty rainy, but a little bit of structure here at least with some rocks over to the left, so we're going to give it a crack. Might get a few big fish, we'll throw the beach rods out, and I think the kids are going to fish with some dart. All else fails, at least we're not sitting at camp in the rain, so let's do it.
The girls spent some time rock fishing and they were definitely getting bites, but it was certainly hard to get them in with that swell. And these waves, some of these, rock fishing's dangerous. In the end, I think they might have spent more time picking oysters and talking, but it's good to get out and give it a go. Ben and the kids are down here beach fishing. I might go have a fish with them and see if they're turning anything up. The kids are excited to show me this dart. Apparently Bella had wound it in, but wasn't real keen on carrying it. So Charlotte's got it here. We're going to go chuck that in the esky and see if we can get any more, because apparently dart go alright. I don't think I've ever eaten them. Well, we'll give them a go. Ben seems to know what he's doing. He reckons this is the spot. And he wasn't lying. He's got another one now. I'm not sure how many Ben's got. Every time I look over, he seems to have a fish. Weather's still pretty questionable, but at least there's some fish coming in. I've got a couple of big beach rods out with some mullet and some squid on the other one, but they appear to be catching a fair few dart now, so might chuck out a dart rig and give that a crack. Get the kids to watch these surf rods while I walk out a little bit, and I'll see if we can get some dart. Some fish, better than no fish. By the time I get my rod rigged up, I'll walk down there and Corbin's onto another dart. This is Ben's boy, and he's only a little fella, but he's into the fish. Unfortunately, I don't have this fish on film, but he did land a nice little dart. In this size of swell, it's impossible for us to keep our baits out in the water for too long, because you throw them out and these big waves wash them back up, so you're constantly reeling them in and throwing them back out to keep them in deep enough water to get a fish. Doesn't look like Ben's having too much problem here. He looks like he's hooked onto another one, but there's definitely a skill set in catching these dart. It was about time I hooked something.
Nice dart.
I'm pretty sure these are swallowtail dart. They've got a bag limit of 30 and a minimum size of 30 centimetres. So I think this guy's probably a bit on the small side. We're going to let him go anyway and see if we can find something a little bit bigger.
Get into him. Quick, fast as you can.
I'm standing out here now with Eleanor and we've hooked a nice little dart. She's a bit concerned about the waves coming in, but I got hold of her and she's going to do her best to get this fish in, just with a little bit of help from Dad. You can really see how shallow these beaches are, with how far those waves roll on up the beach, and that's one of the things that makes it so hard to keep your baits out there in the bite zone.
Alright, that's enough, we got him. That's why he was so hard to come in, you got him in the mouth and the tail. Well done. High five. Nice one.
That was an absolutely cracking dart by Eleanor. I think we ended up with 6 in total between the group of us, so they're going to be our dinner. But it's time for us to get out of here because this weather's taking a turn. In fact, the weather was terrible for the rest of the day. But the next morning we jumped back in the utes and we decided to head on up the beach. Because today was Caitlin's birthday and she wanted to go to Kingfisher. But first, what's this on the beach? This is a medium-sized whale carcass, or what's left of it anyway. It's apparent that the rangers have dragged this up into the dunes, so it's not a traffic hazard for cars going by. The dingoes have obviously had a pretty good feed on it, and there's not much left of the thing, almost just the skeleton, but this one whale's died, but a lot of other animals would have got sustenance from it, so it lives on in them. But we've got to keep moving because Kingfisher is literally on the other side of the island. It's on the west coast. So we've got to drive down a fair distance back down south and then find a track to cut across the island and make our way to Kingfisher. Kingfisher's a pretty big resort and it's actually another place you can catch the barge across from the mainland. It's only the 2 spots, the southern one from Inskip, which we caught, and then Kingfisher. It's a bit dearer because it's a little bit further by boat, and most of the time you've got less chance of getting involved on and off of the barge.
Righto, this morning we're cutting right across the island. We're racing the incoming tide. We've got to get across Eli Creek. That's going to have a little bit of water pumping into it this morning because it's about an hour from the top, but it hasn't looked so bad or run it out as it is sometimes. So we're going to attempt to cross that, head down the island, back down south, and then cut right across to the other side. Alright, so we made it across Eli Creek. It wasn't too deep. The waves were breaking into it, but nothing too substantial. Managed to the water wasn't even up to the car, it was just sort of halfway up the wheel, so.
The next obstacle we faced had a little bit more danger involved. We needed to get around this headland so we can continue our journey and make good time. But after walking the track first, it was pretty obvious we'd be able to dart between the waves and get up onto this higher sand up close to the rocks in between the breaks if we needed to. Luckily, I had a big window and managed to get through in one go. Travelling the eastern beach is not recommended at high tide. Normally the sand that's not under the waves is super soft, but because we've had so much rain, sort of make do skirting along the edge of the dunes and the high tide line. As long as you time your waves correctly, you'll be right. It wasn't long till we made it onto the inland track.
So this track, it's heaps more rutted out than it was a couple of days when we came over it. We actually came back the other way from our trip inland to the Valley of the Giants. We used this as our exit track. We decided to take this inland because it wasn't too bad. It was heaps better than the Happy Valley track, but the rain we've had over the last couple of days have really rutted it out. So we're just going to have to see how it goes and take it slow, but I think it is about 30 or 40 k's across the island, so it might just be a slow trip. Certainly bumpy.
A big portion of the interior is covered by this lush rainforest, and although it's beautiful, it certainly is wet. But The good thing that comes with the rain is that the tracks are nice and firm, and it was relatively uneventful travelling through the rainforest. The sand was firm, there's a few puddles lying around, but nothing too substantial. And within a couple of hours, we reached Kingfisher. Kingfisher's got several restaurants, bars, general stores, and a service station. We'd come here for a feed, but everyone was pretty excited to get out on the big jetty and see if there was any fish out there. The jetties were renowned for having big pelagics hanging around eating the bait schools that pile up under the jetty. And today, I don't think it's going to be any different. There were hundreds of thousands of herring balled up under the jetty, and there was some big mac tuna giving them the what for. There were plenty of people around fishing for them, catching the herring and dropping them back down with a hook in them, trying to get the tuna to hit their bait. I didn't see anyone hook one of these monsters. I even tried jigging for them, and I had a few follows, but no hookups. You can see the herring down there. Look at them, there's maybe millions of them. Nonetheless, this is a spectacular boardwalk to walk out on, looking back at Kingfisher and Fraser Island. Ben managed to catch a fish, a pretty decent yellowfin brim. Not the kind of thing I was expecting to come out from under here, but it shouldn't be that surprising. That's a cracker fish, mate. As the tide continued to recede, it exposed some yabby banks, which were teeming with whiting and shovel-nosed sharks. I'm sure there'd be some monster flatties around here, but we didn't see any. I had the spear and I threw it at a few squid, but didn't manage to recreate that magic shot I had out on the reef. The kids have had enough fishing, and it's time to go for a quick swim, and we'll get a feed at the sandbar before we hit the road again. Whilst at Kingfisher and checking the maps, we realised that Lake Mackenzie wasn't too far out of our way on the way back. Caitlin really wanted to get there the other day, so we thought we'd stop in, considering it's her birthday, and check it out. Weather pending. So it was pretty obvious the weather wasn't getting better. If anything, it was getting worse, but the kids were keen for a swim. Caitlin wanted to check it out, so we're going to make a hike down to the lake anyway and see what it's all about. Lake Mackenzie is the biggest freshwater lake on the island, and it looks like something out of a sci-fi movie with that light blue glow. Even though today it's raining fairly heavy, the kids are excited to get in. They tell me the water actually feels warm. Mackenzie's water is notoriously cold, only about 18 or 19 degrees all year round. So, I mean, in comparison to the freezing cold rain, maybe it does feel warm for them. That's a little bit too cold for me still. I'm going to walk down and dip my toes in the water. That's about it for me. I'm going to sit back with Rachel and let Caitlin, Ben and the kids have a blast and blow off a bit of steam. Long drives on this island between all the different things you want to check out. So when you stop, it's best to let them wear themselves out a bit. With everyone thoroughly wet, it was time to get back in the utes and start making the long trek out.
Righto, so we made it to McKenzie finally. Rain didn't ease up, it rained the whole time we were there. But it was somewhere I had to tick off the bucket list. Caitlin and the girls had never been there before. We've just got to find our way out now. Ben's stopped at the sign, trying to figure out the best way back to the beach because the tide's coming up. We'll probably be past high tide by the time we get there. It's raining, it's nearly 5 o'clock and we've got probably 2 hours drive ahead of us to get back across the island, so.
It was time we got into it, and unfortunately we didn't make Central Station again. I've heard it's a pretty cool place to check out with a few historical sites. I don't think we're going to make it back over this side of the island on this trip to Fraser, so if you've got some pictures or some info about Central Station, send it through on the Facebook page or on Instagram so I can see what I've been missing out on. But it's time we hit these tracks pretty hard and try and get back out before it gets dark, because that's definitely going to slow things up. These tracks can be a bit deadly in the dark, and even on the beach. Got to watch out for those washouts, those dingoes and all that driftwood. Let's get into it. Righto, that's the end of part 3 of exploring Fraser Island. This is the complete guide, everything you need to know, or at least everything I can tell you. Make sure you tune in for the next part, which possibly will be the final part. Still to come on this trip, we've got the Sandy Cape, we've got the Lighthouse sort of, champagne pools to swim in, shark fishing at night, Nagala Rocks, the Cathedral Dune, and probably more. I don't know. Join us next time for the final instalment of the complete guide to exploring Fraser Island.